that day will forever haunt me and haunt my family.
A Missouri family recounts the life-changing day 24-year-old Mackenzie Hopkins was found beaten to death in the bathtub of her Kansas City home. Her then 4-year-old daughter also found severely beaten.
I was walking in and my daughter screamed, and I saw the blood on the floor. They pulled me out immediately and went in, and we both collapsed.
Now, Mackenzie's family is speaking with Law&Crime for the first time since her killer was sentenced.
He is an animal, and he had no humane thought left to allow him to stop what he did.
That's Shannon Hopkins, father of 24-year-old Mackenzie, who was known to her family as Mickey.
She really came in her own when she became a mother. I mean, she was always funny, subtly funny, but when she became a mom, she found her place, I think, in life. She had just started nursing school, and her first job in that world.
Mickey's daughter is now 6-year-old Bella, who survived the brutal attack that killed her mother.
She remains our only grandchild. She's 6 now, but she really was the miracle that kept us all going after this happened. I mean, we were told by the doctors that she might be the same Bella that we remember. That she had to learn to talk and walk again. After she was in the hospital, she had surgery to replace. They had a plate put into her head because her injuries were massive in that way.
It was January 15th, 2022 that changed everything for the Hopkins family. What were your first indications that something was off?
Late in the evening, my wife had spoken to Mickey and knew that they were going to be up late watching movies. It was a Friday night, so she wasn't working the next day. Her hours, she worked overnight at the hospital, so her hours were crazy. She was always up late and would sleep in on the days that she wasn't working, most days, because she wasn't working during the days. So when she didn't call right away when we were expecting her to, we weren't necessarily concerned.
Shannon says Mickey always returned phone calls to her family, so when they still hadn't heard from her, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Shannon headed to Mickey's house along with his then 13-year-old daughter, Hazel.
My youngest daughter and I decided about 5 o'clock that evening to head over to the house to check and see why she wasn't calling us back. And about halfway there, I just had a feeling that something had happened. I mean, I truly thought the worst possible scenario was that she'd moved into a new place for herself, and I thought maybe, gas leak. I mean, I was thinking horrible things, but certainly not anything to the level of what we found when we arrived there.
We spoke to Hazel too in her first interview since Mickey's death.
It is something that you really would never, ever think of to happen to you or to anyone you know. Because it's the kinds of things that you see in movies. And it's really just one of the most unsensible acts anyone could ever do. And that day will forever haunt me and haunt my family. And I really don't know what else to say, because it's hard to explain, like someone that hasn't gone through what I've gone through and what my family has gone through really truly doesn't understand the life-altering effects that January 15th, 2022 had.
While on the way to Mickey's home, Shannon decided to call police and request a welfare check on her.
So I called for a welfare check about halfway there. It was about a 30-minute drive from where we lived. We got there in about 15 minutes after the call. The police had just arrived. We got there about the same time. And they were walking up. They asked me if I had a key, and I did. And I walked up. My daughter was behind me. The police, the two officers were on the porch. And I put the key in, and it pushed right open, and it was completely dark in the house. And they shined their lights in as I was walking in, and my daughter screamed. And I saw the blood on the floor. They pulled me out immediately and went in. And, we both collapsed.
And your dad had mentioned to me when you guys are walking up with the police, going to the door afterward, he says he collapsed. Is that what you remember too? Just collapsing?
Yeah, we fell into each other and we just held each other, and it was incredibly hard to try to wrap our minds around what we just saw and what the night would unfold. And I think we just held each other and supported each other as much as we possibly knew how to in that moment. I think honestly it was the most earth-shattering thing that anyone could have ever gone through. And being there with my dad, I'm so grateful that I was there with my dad, and that my family was, at the end of the night, my family was also surrounding me, because I don't know, if this were a different day and I was older and I was taking care of my sister, if I was on my own, it would have been a much different situation. And I'm so grateful to have my family now. And that day, I will never be the same. My niece will never be the same. No one in my entire family will ever be the same. No one that ever knew my sister will ever be the same.
Inside, first responders found Mickey in her bathtub. She'd been severely beaten and was already dead when they arrived. Her daughter Bella had also been beaten, but was still alive.
After about 45 minutes, they brought Bella out on a stretcher, and we didn't know, we were quite a ways from where they were coming out, and we weren't sure who it was. But then Bella actually, I think, made a noise or raised her hand. And so we were yelling to her, and that's when they told us that there was one deceased person in the house, and there was very little that we could hope for at that point for Mickey.
Ahead of our interview, Shannon told me he'd seen several news reports saying he discovered Mickey in the bathtub. He says that's not the case. Sounds like some reports are saying inaccuracies. So I just want to clear this up on air. You did not walk in and did not see Mickey inside, correct?
That's correct.
Instead, Shannon was outside comforting Hazel and coming to terms with the news.
I was trying to comfort my daughter, and there's no parenting that I've ever experienced that can handle that type of situation. I just held her, and we didn't say anything to each other. We were just sobbing. Horror that each one of us had to live through. It's just, for me as a father, it's unthinkable that I wasn't able to protect Mickey. And so I was dealing with my own feelings of inadequacy at that point, and I probably wasn't doing my job as a father to comfort my daughter, who I'm sure was just dealing with her own trauma.
We find out, you and your family on the scene, that she unfortunately has passed away. But it isn't something like what you thought, a gas leak or a slip and fall. It's something much more sinister. What is going through your mind when you find out that she has been murdered? I mean, you talked to me about your daughter. She sounded like she's very caring. She cares about other people. So why would someone do that to her?
And I wish I could give you the exact thought process that went, that I experienced at that moment, but it's just a true blur. I mean, I was thinking that I was trying to think in my mind who would do something like this, but it was a fleeting thought, because then it was just this dark, sorrowful time that we're the entire family is finding out at different interims in the evening, and we're all having to experience that initial pain all over again, and so it was. I probably was thinking that, trying to imagine who might do something like this. I mean, my thought all along, until they actually caught Jose, was that it was a random thing, someone that she didn't know. I mean, just knowing who Mickey was and how much she cared about everyone that was in her life, it never occurred to me that someone she knew could have done something so incredibly awful to her and to Bella.
Investigators eventually tracked down 29-year-old Jose Escalante Corchado, who was arrested in connection to Mickey's murder. He was charged with first-degree murder, assault, 2 counts of armed criminal action, and endangering welfare of a child. Detectives were able to track down Escalante Corchado with surveillance video. He'd been seen running from Mickey's home after the time of her murder and showing up at a gas station just minutes later. Investigators also matched a pair of his cowboy boots with prints found at the crime scene. They say Escalante Corchado's motive was a fake story told to him by his ex-girlfriend. She was a friend of Mickey's and had lied to him, saying she was hanging out with Mickey when she was really going out to a party.
We all asked him why. I mean, we know why, because he is an animal, and he had no humane thought left to allow him to stop what he did. I mean, not only did he not stop what he did, he came back once the police came, knocked on the door once and left. He came back to finish the job and to beat our granddaughter, and which is why it was so difficult for me to accept the plea, and for our family to accept the plea, because there's no question in our minds that it was premeditated. He had plenty of time. He could have left.
Escalante Corchado was expected to go to trial this spring, but took a plea deal last month. He was sentenced to 30 years behind bars. And if we're talking about the plea deal, I know that you had mentioned it earlier. You said it was difficult for you and your family to come to terms with that rather than have a jury trial that was scheduled for next month now. How did all of that come to play?
There was apparently no weapon found. I think my wife and I are certain, and the family, that we know probably what was used. She had a bar on her front door that was very heavy, and they didn't find that at the scene, and I know it was there that night. So they didn't find that. They told us that the jury pool that they would probably have to draw from might knock that down because of that lack of evidence to murder two, and if that's the best case scenario, and that 25 years would be the maximum sentence for that charge. So they convinced us that negotiating to 30.
Do you feel like 30 years is enough of a sentence?
I don't feel like 1,000,000 years is enough of a sentence. I'm quite honestly, the death penalty is allowed in Missouri. In Missouri, it's an option. We were told that going for the death penalty, this was early on, that it would take many years and probably many juries and many, they just have a difficult time.
What do you feel? Do you think that's long enough? Do you think it should have been something different?
I don't think 30 years is at all anywhere comparable to how long. I truly believe in my heart that the only thing that is comparable is him the way my sister did. Him getting the ultimate karma, because he is a monster and nothing could ever compare to what my sister went through, and nothing will ever suffice. 30 years will never be good enough. I'm just grateful that he is not living free. I'm grateful that he is behind bars, and I'm just dreading the day that me and my siblings and my niece and my future children, future family will have to deal with when he gets out and when he could possibly be granted parole. But right now it is a big relief to know that we don't have to think about him for the next 30 years. But in my opinion, no amount of years, no amount of days could ever compare, could ever suffice for what he did.
But there's still some unanswered questions in Mickey's case. Shannon says she called 911 hours before she was found, and police even responded to the scene.
What we were told by our attorney, based on camera images that he's seen, videos that he's seen from Ring doorbells in the neighborhood, is that they came. We were told that the 911 call did not hang up. She wasn't able to speak. The cameras show him running out at about the same time that the 911 call came in. So he clearly had known that she'd called for help, and he ran out. He took full advantage. He took full advantage of the fact that he was able to watch the police not help her and then come back immediately. And I don't know what he did before, but he absolutely dragged her to the tub after the police came, and then went in and injured Bella, attempted to murder her as well.
And how does your family feel about the police's reaction to all this?
We're angry. I mean, we are stunned that we live in a world where police would not. The door was ajar. The door that they knocked on, had they knocked the police knock that we all are familiar with from TV and some of us in person, that knock would have opened the door.
Moving forward, the Hopkins family is working to keep Mickey's memory alive. And as for your sister, Mickey, how do you want her to be remembered? How do you want to keep her memory alive and let people know what she was like?
My sister was the brightest light in my life. She was my big sister, and she was my role model. She was everything I wanted to be when I grew up. She was my best friend, and I just want her to be remembered as the bright, bubbly girl that she was. And I want her story to be told because it needs to be told. And I'm grateful that we're here now to share her story. But I think the biggest thing is that her being remembered is something unique to everyone that knew her and unique to anyone who hears the story. But I think for my family and I, we just want to remember her as Mickey. You know, we want to remember her as how she was, and the beautiful, amazing, strong woman that she was, and the beautiful mother that she was.
After her mother's murder, Bella was in the hospital for a month, but has since made a full recovery. She now lives with her dad in Puerto Rico, but is planning to reconnect with Mickey's family this summer. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.